So I'll just start with Lisa KORTE. Lisa is the brand new Sanctuary Director at Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary in Naples, Florida. So welcome. I'll tell you what, I'll keep you ready to go on. So go ahead, Lisa, and start.
Great. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for sticking through to the bitter end. I think one of my reactions is, as a new person to Naples and a new sanctuary director, is just to see the enthusiasm for water issues and to see such a great crowd here. And I was really impressed with all the questions with the policy panel yesterday, as well as at the end of the session. So that, as a scientist, gives me a lot of enthusiasm and feel very welcome here. And tonight I'll talk just a little bit from the perspective of Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, which is a wetland. It's about 30 miles from here. It's 15 miles east of the Immokalee exit on 75. If you haven't been out there, I encourage you to come out there. And it's basically 13,000 acres, and our real point of pride is our bald cypress wetland, as well as marsh wetlands and a little bit of upland pine. So I'm coming from this from the perspective of managing a large natural wetland. And just one of the other comments from the policy panel yesterday from Chauncey Goss I thought was really interesting, this idea of looking at the impact of people on the environment, but then also how the environment impacts people. And I think that really set the stage for a lot of the topics we're talking about today. So what is our impact on wetlands? And then when things go wrong, how does that environment impact us, with Dr. Lee really addressed today. So I thank Dr. Mitch for bringing together such a great panel. It really brings a lot of different threads together. I think another thing that really made an impact on me yesterday was Daniel Andrew, and the captain of Clean Water, when he talked about being 29 years old and watching a fishery collapse in his lifetime. That is just, to be at such a young age and to see that happen already really is a call to action. And I loved his call to action by going around and knocking on different people's doors and bringing the scientists together. I thought that was really striking when he was saying how, when I was talking to the scientists and when I was talking to the legislators and decision makers in Tallahassee, I was hearing two different stories. And so I really credit him and admire his tenacity to get the scientists and the policymakers together. And I think that's so important. Kind of looking at last night, where I liked the idea of presenting some solutions to issues, but I also liked the whole idea of looking at the business side of it. So where's Sean Miller? You're back in the corner. It's not always this early in the game that scientists and entrepreneurs come together. And so I found that a really striking, a good thing to be doing right at the beginning of these conversations, and looking at both the science, but okay, if this science works, how do we make it marketable? And from that, then I'd also say that tonight was kind of the other side of it. Like yesterday, it was like, here's the grand idea, but now we've got the graduate students who are down in the field figuring it out and actually doing it. And so I liked how Bing Bing really gave us the whole idea of, okay, here's what we're seeing on these initial stages. And hydrology, I asked specifically that question about what's the biggest challenge, and you answered hydrology, which is exactly the biggest challenge we have in our natural wetlands. Out at Corkscrew, we've just done an analysis of 60 years of hydrology data, so looking at our water levels over 60 years, and we're seeing over the last 20 years that we are having changes where our dry season water levels are staying low for longer periods. And so, we are looking at those similar questions and having similar challenges. So I found that really interesting as I look at what are the challenges we're facing in our existing wetlands, and then how do you, if you're going to be creating or restoring wetlands, are you going to have similar challenges? And also in terms of just looking at the work by Lauren, again, looking at the scale of that in terms of Hurricane Irma. We have hurricanes here, and even designing things, like you were saying, that you've got changes that, they might, a hurricane event may overcome the system. And even out at Corkscrew with Hurricane Irma, our boardwalk was flooded. I mean, we were looking at high water levels, and so as we're looking to solve some of these problems and think about solutions, we can't only look at averages, we also have to be prepared for those other scenarios. And so I find it interesting that we're seeing similar parallels with these proposed wetlands as well as natural wetlands. And I'd also say that for me, I think while I like this idea of creating wetlands and trying to restore wetlands, it also emphasizes how important our existing wetlands are. Yesterday, Dr. Mitch was talking about how 87% of wetlands have been lost throughout the world. That's incredible. And it makes those ones that are still here, like Corkscrew, Waxahachie, Big Cypress, Everglades, they're that much more important because they still exist. And I think finally, I won't take up too much time, but I'd also say that this cover, I think, is really important too, in terms of really looking at how you manage landscapes. This idea that it's a mosaic, and also talking about biodiversity. And what we found, years of study on biodiversity really speak highly of how you need to have diverse systems. Monocultures are not going to give you the same benefits that you get from biodiversity. So looking at a mosaic and really thinking about things at a landscape level is incredibly important.